Part 1. You will hear a man phoning Preston Community Centre to get information about the classes it offers. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7. Hello, this is Preston Community Centre.
Oh, hello. My name's Andrew Shepherd. I'm ringing about the classes you offer.
OK, Mr. Shepherd. Are there any classes in particular that you're interested in?
Yes, you've got a class called photography, I believe.
That's right. It's the first time we offer this class because many people inquired about it last term. It'll be held in a library not far from our community centre.
Right. I know it's on the weekend, right?
Yes, it's on Saturday and it will occupy the whole morning.
OK. What do I need to bring?
Obviously, you have to bring your own camera. Some people bring a lot of accessories like an extra lens, but there's really no need for this class. It's mainly focusing on composition, really, and getting the most out of the basic camera.
That's exactly what I want. OK. Then I've heard there's a class on cooking, right?
Yes, it's called French Cooking Class. As the name suggests, it will teach you cooking skills in French cuisine.
Oh, great. Where will that be held?
This class is special, so we arrange it in a kitchen where we can get the necessary cooking equipment. Let me see. Yes, the Anita kitchen. As for the time of the course, it used to be on the second Tuesday of every month, but there's a small adjustment this time, although it's still held on a monthly basis. The exact time will be changed to the first Tuesday.
Well, actually, it's my wife who's really interested, and I think it's a good fit for her, because our daughter has to take a guitar lesson every Tuesday, so my wife is available.
That's good, but I have to remind you that aprons are not provided in this class. So when you do come, please bring one with you in case you get dirty when cooking. What's more, don't forget to bring some money with you, as the ingredients for cooking, like vegetables or meat, have to be paid by yourself.
OK. Useful information to know. Then there's another class that my wife would like to join. That's the beading class.
Oh, I've taken the class myself. The tutor is excellent. Last term it was held in a tennis club, which is going to be redecorated soon. So we plan to change this class to a golf club this time, and it'll be held on the evening of every Wednesday.
Do I have to bring the beads with me?
Yes, that's the only material needed for this class.
OK. I think this class is also a good choice for her. Do you have any other classes that I can join?
If you like, I think you can take our painting class. It's a popular class, so this term we're going to move it to a high school so that we can get more room.
What time will it be?
It'll be on every Monday evening.
The time's good for me. Do I have to bring the paints?
Well, paints will be provided by the tutor, I know that. The information says you'll just need some brushes.
I see.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
OK, just another question about the beading class. I've just remembered my wife asked me to find out the exact time. When will the first class begin?
Well, the deadline for registration is April the 30th, and we're not going to start the class until May the 15th.
OK. What's the fee for this class?
It was $95 last term, but the cost will be a little more this term. Well, let me check the details. OK, it'll be $100 this term, just $5 more.
Sounds reasonable. Then about the location. It's in the club. Which room exactly?
Room J52.
OK, just one more question. Is parking convenient?
I'm sorry to tell you that parking space is only available for the club's Premier members. But if you drive, there's a parking lot opposite the club, just beside the station. You need to pay only a small parking fee.
OK, that's all I want to know. I'll call you later after I discuss it with my wife. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1.
You will hear an accommodation officer telling students about different halls of residence. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 11 to 15.
Good afternoon and welcome to Stanton University. I'm here to tell you about the various halls of residence we have available should you choose to come here. We aim to offer accommodation in halls to all first-year students, and you'll find there's a good variety to choose from. First of all, there's Brown Hall, which, as you'll see, is not the most modern of buildings, but it is very popular with some students. It's got a good sense of community, some nice refurbished kitchens, and unlike the other halls, it has recently had a gym built in its basement. Another option is Blake Residence, which is built like a large house, and so everybody cooks and eats together. It has its own sectioned-off bit of private garden and is even more peaceful because this is an all-girls residence. Although, of course, boys are allowed to visit the hall and, I understand, frequently take part in cooking dinner. The largest hall we have is Queen's Building, and this has been upgraded recently. The original parking area has been built on so that the hall now has a large common room, and each bedroom now has its own shower room, which many students regard as a real bonus. A further option is the Parkway Flats, which won an award for design in its day. And this building now has a preservation order on it. This has meant that only a limited amount could be done to upgrade it, and the surrounding area is important, so parking is not permitted around the flats. However, the flats do have many extra facilities, such as a special computer room, a small library, and a self-service restaurant. The cost of breakfast, lunch and dinner is covered in the fees for this hall, so it does look a bit more expensive. The last residence we can offer you is Temple Rise, which again is slightly more expensive than other halls as the rooms are larger. This has got very lovely views across to the coast, and this more than compensates for the fact that bathrooms here are shared between 6 students. However, the hall has domestic staff who clean the rooms once a week, so this is perhaps an attractive option for the messier amongst you.
You now have 30 seconds to read questions 16 to 20.
Now, if I can just show on this wall map here where they all are, you might like to go and have a look round. If you come into the main university entrance, at the first junction, you'll find that Brown Hall is on the corner opposite the theatre. So you're nice and near the station here, though I think it can get a bit noisy with traffic. The same applies to Blake Residence, which is directly facing the junction to the university entrance. These halls are often used by medical students and such like, as they're out all day, so don't notice the noise. Anyway, if you then walk along Campus Road towards the main circle, you'll see the library on the corner, and Queen's Building is just past that as you head north. You will find that it is quieter here, and you may get fewer visitors. By the way, the circle is quite a feature of the campus, as it's set into the hills and has a brand new sports center in the middle. It's worth going to look around it. Now, the Parkway Flats are on the opposite corner to the library, facing the circle, as you head towards the main buildings. The main buildings are only about a 5-minute walk from here, and places in these halls go quickly, so my advice is to reserve your place as soon as possible. Then Temple Rise is inside the circle, next to the sports center, but further from the main university buildings. Now, if you'd like to go off and physically look...
Part 3. You will hear two students called Arya and John discussing the research on water hyacinths. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26. John, how is it going with your research on water hyacinth?
Well, I went on a field trip on my own and collected the primary data. After I came back, I also referred to the published data.
So, what do you know about this plant?
The water hyacinth grows in tropical countries. It has beautiful purple-blue flowers, but everybody hates it.
Why is that?
The water hyacinth, as the world's worst invasive aquatic plant, has attracted significant attention. Millions of these plants grow in rivers and lakes and have brought huge environmental and cultural problems to the local people. Farmers cannot travel in boats on the water and thus cannot fish in it. In addition, heavy free-floating mats of water hyacinth are clogging the dam at the power station in West Africa. Turbines of the power station are often shut down because of the intertwined leaves. Dams often cease to function as a result, severely restricting the electricity generation. Dense mats of water hyacinth also shade the surface and prevent algae growth, thus limiting the production of oxygen and threatening the survival of fish.
So, where did water hyacinth originate from?
The water hyacinth is native to the Amazon basin in Latin America. It has spread mainly to the tropics and subtropics throughout much of the world since the 1800s. Later, it was introduced into Europe and Africa as an ornamental garden pond plant due to its beauty. Flowers of this plant were being sold in local markets in African countries as a source of income for women. Since the 1900s, this weed has infested lakes, rivers, and creeks of the delta areas in West Africa.
I guess whoever introduced this plant had never expected the disastrous impact it would have on the local ecological environment. What kind of habitat does water hyacinth thrive most in?
Well, it has been discovered that the nutrient-rich environment contributes significantly to the rapid proliferation of this weed, which obtains its nutrients directly from the water. This is normally compounded with a decrease of nutrients along the river banks.
Why is that?
The main reason for soil nutrient loss is that local residents cut down trees. Excessive deforestation accelerates soil erosion, which indirectly compounds this issue. Without enough trees to retain nutrients in the soil, frequent rain might partly aggravate this by carrying some of the nutrients into the waterways.
Are there any effective measures to control or even eradicate this weed?
Yes, a number of approaches have been widely applied throughout the world. Among them, biological control is the most widely favored long-term control method by introducing a type of insect that feeds on water hyacinth. So far, Nigeria has used this method for 6 months. However, the water hyacinth won't be removed immediately. The side effects of this method on the local ecology will remain unforeseen for years because it takes time for this external insect species to reach a density sufficient enough to affect ecological development.
Then what about other approaches? Is there a quicker way to control it?
Well, the mechanical removal of water hyacinth is seen as the best short-term solution. This option includes harvesting plants and in-site cutting. This method can immediately open physical space for fish and boat traffic. It is, however, inefficient for workers to process extensive areas, and costly to use large cutting and dredging equipment. Ironically, it costs even more to dispose of this plant than to remove it.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30. Can we make use of this weed and turn it into something good?
Now scientists think that water hyacinth can be useful. The plant itself, although more than 95% water, has a fibrous tissue and a high energy and protein content and can be used for a variety of useful applications.
So what do people do with water hyacinth that is initially removed?
First, the cut-down water hyacinth is left to dry under the sun for a few days before being mixed with ash and animal manure. The mixture can be used as alternative soil rather than fertilizer. It can grow crops with increased yield.
That sounds interesting.
Mushroom farmers can benefit from water hyacinth as well. Using the mixture mentioned earlier, mushrooms generally grow much faster so that farmers can harvest mushrooms sooner, which enables them to make money faster.
I see. It can be used to grow oyster and straw mushrooms, right?
Yes. In India, attempts have been made to grow these types of edible mushrooms organically utilizing water hyacinth. These mushrooms provide sufficient nutritional values, including minerals and high-quality protein, which are essential to people's level of fitness.
Right. Are there any other measures taken to utilize water hyacinth?
In Southeast Asia, people feed cows using chopped water hyacinth mixed with other vegetables. Then the waste from the cows is treated to produce methane gas, which can be used as fuel for cooking, lighting, or powering an engine. And with global warming getting worse, developing alternative sources of energy will be more urgent than ever.
Maybe in the future, people will love water hyacinth instead of hating it.
Yes, that's very likely if we can make full use of this weed.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3.
Section 4. You will hear a lecture on lions. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
As part of this series of lectures on wildlife, I'm going to talk today about lions, about their history and about some of the work that's been done with lions in recent years. When we think of lions, we tend to think of Africa, as this is the only area of the world where they still exist in the wild, apart from some small groups in the Indian forest of Gir. But you might be surprised to know that lions were once virtually everywhere on the planet. In fact, if you go back 500,000 years, there were more lions roaming the world than dogs or monkeys. You could bump into one in London, Moscow, or LA, in every part of Africa apart from the desert. In fact, the only continents that were and have always been lion-free were the frozen plains of Antarctica, which were obviously much too inhospitable for this jungle creature, and Australia, though there is plenty of bushland there. So what happened? Well, we know for certain that as recently as the 1800s, that's just 200 years ago, lions were being hunted to extinction in some parts of the world, sometimes just for sport. But long before that, about 10,000 years ago, lions started to disappear from various corners of the globe. Scientists believe there was the usual battle with our human ancestors for food in the form of other smaller creatures, with many lions also being killed to make clothing. So lions may have gone from Europe, but there are plenty of prehistoric paintings to witness their presence, and they reveal some interesting facts. Let's take a look. These cave paintings were found in France. The outlines are slightly blurred because they were hand-drawn using materials like charcoal or ochre, but the images are still very clear, and the interesting thing is that, as you can see, in the past, lions were actually a lot bigger than they are now. They come up to this man's waist. You may think the size has been exaggerated because of the man's fear, but there's plenty of fossil evidence that supports the larger proportions these animals once had, when you compare them with the African lions of the present day. The other curious thing here is that none of the male lions seen in cave paintings like this have the long black or blonde hair around their necks and faces that is called a mane. Now, the lion's mane is another interesting feature of these creatures. No one seems to know much about it. There are none in cave paintings like these. And even today, the date when the lion's mane first appeared is unknown. And there is disagreement among scientists as to what its purpose is. A lot of work has gone into researching this. If you think about it, no other cat has a mane. So why does a lion have one? And a lion's mane can be various lengths and colours, not unlike human hair. Some are long, some are short. They can be black, brown, or blonde, and they can be in good or bad condition. What scientists do know is that when lions fight, they tend to go for each other's necks. And at first, this led some researchers to believe that the mane acts as a form of protection during battles with neighbouring prides. That may be partly true, but not everyone agrees it's the whole explanation. One leading lion expert believes that manes are more to do with attracting females and scaring off males, and he's run an experiment to test this theory out. What he did was to make 5 toy lions and put them in the lion's territory. He made sure they all looked different. Some had long, light-coloured manes, some had short, dark ones, and so on. He put these in places where they were sure to be seen, and for a while the lions ignored them. But eventually they went up to the models, and, well, the female lions were attracted to the ones that had long, dark manes. The male lions weren't. They just kept away from them. What interested them were the ones with short, blonde manes. They approached these and bit or clawed them quite aggressively. When the results of this study were compared with the real-world situation, it was found that lions with long, dark manes tend to be the healthiest, while ones with short, blonde manes are more likely to be injured or sick. Thus, the team concluded that a lion's mane is effectively a status symbol, that it shows how strong and healthy the lion is, and as a result makes the lion more attractive to females.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.